What's up, y'all? This is Neena Perez, and this is Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. And I go around this amazing planet finding the best humans I can find to come on here to grow, challenge, and transform your thinking. I am so stoked that you guys are hanging out with us because you always are so engaged in our audience and in our people and who I bring on. And you're always leaving me messages and DMs and all that great stuff. And I just freaking love you guys. And I want to thank you for all that pouring that you put into my show, into the podcast, into the whole thing. I have a really cool person for you today. So we are honored today to be welcomed by Dave Nordell. And Dave is a distinguished veteran with a remarkable 30-year service in the United States Air Force, where he rose to a prestigious rank of Commander Chief Master Sergeant. I hope I got that right. His dedication to service is underscored by his academic achievements in emergency medicine and disaster management, and his valor is recognized with awards like the Bronze Star, I hope I got that right, and the Legion of Merit. Now, beyond his military legacy, Dave is a celebrated author with works that reflect his journey from the farm life to leadership roles, and he is also driven and has this, he's the force behind Max Fab Consulting, where he is really just experiencing commitment and mentoring veterans and young leaders. And I love all that he's about. So thank you so much for hanging out with us today, Dave. I am truly stoked you're here. How are you?
Well, I guess that's the end of the podcast. That was actually awesome.
Good.
What a home run. I'm Maximum Fabulous.
And we'll Maximum Fabulous. I freaking love that. I love that answer.
We'll talk a little bit about that, I'm sure, somewhere in here. So
we are going to talk about that. Yes, we are. As long as I got you, I'm going to talk to you. Okay. So I do have a question though. I want to know more about you. I know I gave a little bio, but I know that that's just a bio, right? So I want to know more about David. Who are you, David? What are you about? Come on, talk to me. Who are you, David?
Sure. No, I get it. When I will tell you that the name of your podcast is probably something that somebody would go, hey, did you see the name of that podcast? You should be on that, Dave. Because anybody that knows me will say, ooh, straight talk and no sugar. And sometimes I get big thumbs up for that. And sometimes I get asked to leave the room. So it's
same. Good with both.
Yeah, and it is a thing. Well, usually the people that ask me to leave the room are just doing me a favor. So it's all good. Anyway,
that's right.
I didn't say that. So Dave Nordell is a fourth generation Portuguese immigrant whose family left the Azores in Portugal and immigrated to America and made their meager beginnings dairy farming. And so, as you mentioned in the book, I grew up on a farm. I grew up around animals and people and hard work. And as I was talking to a friend of mine who's actually in Billings, Montana with me, after growing up together in this little itty bitty town, we both ended up in Billings, and I just had coffee with him this morning. Oh, cool. And I asked him, I said, what makes us unique from our backgrounds? Because our families are different, obviously, but what makes us unique growing up where we grew up? And he said, Dave, from the time we were 5 years old, that we could remember and contribute, he said, the animals always ate first. There was always a higher calling in our life than ourselves. And so for your whole, and I do that as a foundation, because 30 years of military service also is 30 years of service, period. And the reason that you do it and why we're there is not about us, and it's not about being a command chief, master sergeant. I got there because the people that I led pushed me up, and the people above me wanted me to be in positions, at least for a certain amount of time, to have the most impact, so that I could continue to serve and have the ability to do that with some oomph, with something behind that. But in there, there is a lot of life lessons. There's a lot of screwing up. There's a lot of bad decisions. There's, 15 moves in 30 years. So moving every 2 years. Raised a couple of boys in the middle of all that, and I'm very proud of, and they're doing very well. And my wife of 30 years, I drug her along with me. She's a veteran also, but she got out. And we made a decision. Somebody was staying, somebody was going. She got out to raise kids, which she got the hard job, and I got to do the easy piece. And I will tell you, as the books talk about, the adversity in service, the adversity through transition, the coming to the realization that I'm the proud owner of PTSD and moral injury. That we can delve into those at some point if you'd like. And having to do some lifestyle changes, learn about what a life team is, how to hire and fire on a life team to build
Mm,
all of that around you, and to get to a point in your life where you can really go through your little footlocker of stuff and go, look at all these nuggets in here, and be able to make the decision that I can share those and actually give people a little bit of actually put people in an introspective state to help them grow and develop in a way that's healthy. And
mhm.
it's not to not make the mistakes that Dave made, but to let people understand that this life journey that we go through is congruent with everybody else's life journey. So lots of children have been raised, lots of children have broken an arm, lots of jobs have been lost, or positions have been lost. All of those things have happened, and so I have a conglomeration of a lot of that, to include doing probably what is the second most responsible thing in your life as a human, is when you're given the responsibility of leading other humans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you do that in combat, and you're responsible for, the parents of the people that I led were never far from my mind, because they had an inherent trust in me and expected things of me, and I never let that fall short in the forefront of it. So what is that crescendo? I'm 58 years old. I'll be 59 next July, and here I am out there trying to help companies and people and leaders position themselves to create
Mm.
environments to make people healthy, emotionally, physically, and mentally healthy, especially our veterans. So,
Well, there's a couple of things in that amazing story of who you are that I want to touch on. So, one of them is you mentioned moral injury. So, of course, I don't know what that is, and I want you to dive
sure.
into what that is. But also, I want to talk about, you having the amazing experiences that you have, and in being in the military, having your wife have to go and raise the kids and all that, being away from
Mhm.
family, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
What was like a challenge that you had to overcome that you felt like was one of the things you didn't think you were going to get through? Do you have a moment like that?
Oh, oh. Yeah. Which answer do you want first? Moral injury, or do you want that one?
I want that one first, and then I want to get
Sure.
into moral injury because I
Sure.
really want to know what that's about. Yeah.
A challenge that I didn't think I was going to get through. I think there was moments in time, and here's a life lesson. There was moments in time that I knew what I wanted to achieve. I knew kind of what I had to do to get there. I knew the sacrifices that needed to be made, and the pressures of doing those things. And this is not about taking care of myself. It's about doing what's required of me to do all those things that I talked about at the beginning, as far as
Mm,
being a servant. When you serve, sometimes you learn the capacity of your battery. And when you're bad, and I'm a high end extrovert, so doing stuff like this, when we're done, I'm going to go out and talk to my wife. I'm going to go, that was great,
yeah.
and if I was an introvert, I would go out and I would get in a dark room and sleep for 5 hours, right? But you learn the capacity of your battery, and I will
Mm,
tell you that when your battery gets low, you're vulnerable. And I got vulnerable at times, and I made bad decisions. I made expedient decisions to help deal with that. One of that was an aberrant relationship with alcohol. And it's not that I was a raving drunk or an alcoholic where I needed to be treated, but the way I used alcohol in my life was abusive to me, and
mm,
abuse of that. And so biggest challenge was learning balance, and
mm.
how to keep your spirit balanced and those type of things, because that's a when you're way out of balance, your self-talk gets negative, and when your self-talk gets negative,
Yeah.
you're not Max Fab, for one, and we can talk a little bit about that. So yeah, I mean that balance challenge when you get out of whack, and
Hmm.
I'll tell you, a long military career, even 4 years in the military, can really get you out of whack, because sometimes the priorities that you'd like to pick can't be your priorities, because the service that you're in
Right.
requires a lot of sacrifice.
And it becomes like a way of life, right? Like this chronic stress
Mm.
level. Like you're just so
Oh,
used to that chronic stress. You are
no.
constantly there. That must have been a really big challenge, even transitioning from that right? Like
Oh,
getting out of the service, and then that
oh,
chronic stress, like, oh my God, that must have been difficult, right? So how did you refill your battery, or how did you find that balance? What was that?
mm, well, I had to have some rude awakenings, some punches in the face, had to have a near-death experience.
Mm,
You hedged on a couple of things there. One is, and this is core to my work, and I have a program called Vet Ready where I work with employers to make an environment that's veteran ready,
I
not a
love that.
veteran
I love
friendly
that.
environment, or not. It needs to be veteran ready, and they need to, they need to be able to recognize the attributes of a veteran. They need to encourage and be educated to what that is. They need to be adaptable, and build an adaptability thing, and
Hmm.
they need to design an environment, and they need to be able to work to getting to yes for the veteran. And so there's kind of your ready acronym, and they need to do that because my transition was ugly. And I will tell you, from the day I got the basic training, they put a figurative backpack on me, and they put things in my backpack, stuff I needed to do: shine your boots, iron your uniform,
Yeah.
uh, cut your hair, all of those things. And those are little feathers, and they put them in there. When I took that thing off after 30 years, I was like, I've been carrying that around for 30 years. This
Right.
is crazy. But you naturalize to it because they don't throw all of the weight on at once. It's gradually put on there. And when you get out, it is no different. You are institutionalized at the same level that somebody that's incarcerated is.
Hmm.
And we do more for our prisoners in this country than we do for our veterans. Prisoners
Wow.
get a parole officer, and it's a little change in their pocket, and they get to go see somebody to find them a job, and they get pre-release so that they're kind of
Hmm.
monitored. And if they have substance abuse or issues, they get the counseling that goes along with that. Veterans get a pat on the back
Hmm.
and a thumbs up, and then they're kind of released to society. And there's a lot of organizations out there that are doing great work helping you find a place to work and a place to go, but nobody follows you into that place and makes sure that it's ready. So
Right.
you would never drop your kid off at daycare at the curb if you hadn't been in there, talked to the people, looked around, made sure it was right, kept an eye on your kid, made sure they were thriving, all those kind of things. And so, so that's the mission there. So when you say it must be difficult, I will tell you that it's tied around purpose, camaraderie, the sense of team and those kind of things. And when you don't have purpose, you start to lose your hope. And when you don't
Hmm.
have hope, that can lead to self-elimination. And that's a big deal. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're losing over 40 veterans a day to
Wow.
self-elimination.
Wow. Wow. That hurts my heart.
It should. It should.
That
It
hurts my
should. It
heart.
should. It should hurt everybody's heart, and it should compel them to action to do what comes after. Thank you for your service. Because
Yeah.
if you're truly thankful, you'll want to do something. And to do the
Yeah.
things that veterans need, it takes effort and energy, and you have to be fully bought in and believe in it. And if you can do that, and you can help veterans come into an environment where they feel valued, they have a sense of purpose, and you have mined all of the wonderful, wonderful gifts that they've been trained and given in those time frames, and you utilize them. Oh, your environment is going to
Yeah.
thrive. It's going to be safer, better, more dynamic, strategic thinking, agile as far as handling adversity, because that's what we do.
And when you think about it too, like, if I had a big company, my husband's a vet, and my father was a vet, my uncle's a vet, and they're just so dedicated. Like
Hmm.
just reliable, and just dedicated. My husband just started that's why we moved to a different state, because he started a new position. He's in construction, but his dedication was so high that the company's like, oh my gosh, I don't know how we got you, but we don't ever want you to leave, because they realize if the man is up at 4 a.m. at work by
Right,
4:45, like he's
right,
working, and that's just how he's built.
right.
And so the companies who are listening, because I know there's a lot of like CEOs and leaders and stuff that listen to this podcast, need to realize that the gem that is getting vet ready.
Hmm.
Um, because you're talking about people who have dedicated their life to serving others, right? And so what they just need now is us to serve them a bit, you
Right.
know? And I
And
think that's beautiful.
Yeah, leaders, entrepreneurs, they want people around them to ride for the brand.
Yep.
Veterans are looking for the brand. We ran around with stuff on our shirt that identified us, our units, our
Right.
name, our service, all of those things, right? And we want to ride for a brand. If owners can get over the exuberance of how we ride for the brand, because it scares some people.
Yeah.
Because we think we're an asset, and some people think that we're an ass. We're trying to take their job. We're trying to show them up.
Right.
It's none of that. We're just being natural. We're just doing what we know how to do. Now, and we're not there to steal anybody's job. We're there
Right.
because for the team and to serve, and for the brand to be successful and to get into the end zone. Right? It's a baseball or a football game, not a boxing match. It's not an individual sport, and we don't look at it. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is interesting. It's the way you're built too, right? I mean, you're built to serve that way. So when you come in at this, a vet comes in at a brand or a job or an opportunity or whatever, they're coming in at it with the same kind of diligence and tenacity and strength and camaraderie. Coming in with that because they're for that brotherhood, right?
Yeah,
For that
exactly.
sister.
All that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's fantastic. And I love that you're doing this kind of work. I think it is so important. And for those who are listening who maybe are vets, this is something you should really be looking into, whether it's helping David's mission and what he's doing, or actually, learning more about it for yourself. Because I think, it's just so important.
Yeah. It's my newest labor of love.
Yeah.
It's not an easy sell because you're talking about culture, and people will shy away from culture because it's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard work.
Yeah.
And we want people that are wanting to do the hard work and to create the environment. And once the environment's created, the return on investment is just
Oh, yeah.
it's tenfold. So
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I know from my own family, I've seen it. I know the
Right.
dedication that comes with it. So but I do want you to touch on this moral injury thing. I don't think I've heard that before. So I really
It's-
need you to kind of educate us
Sure.
on what that is.
Oh, I'll do that for you. And by the way, you're in the majority camp of not understanding moral injury.
Okay. Good.
In fact, my moral injurious story just got published in the AEther, which is the
Nice.
Air and Space Power Journal. And so my story is the lead into the science behind moral injury. Morality, our ethics, our foundation, our religion, our beliefs, what our parents tell us, our norms. If you think about that in any context in life, okay, moral injury is not a military thing. Moral injury is a human thing. Moral injury spans the scope of everything from combat stuff, which I'll explain, to sexual trauma for especially females, but men have sexual trauma too. It's sexual trauma. These are things when stuff is put into your life where the choices that you have to make are directly opposed to your morality, your beliefs, your professional ethics, all of it. Right. So I'll give you an example because I'm a storyteller, and I just gave this speech at the Veterans Hall of Fame in Atlanta last week or about 10 days ago. And I'll do it quick because we don't have a lot of time. But in Iraq in 2008, I was a senior enlisted leader for the entire country of Iraq. Everything in Iraq came to us. All the injuries, enemy, civilians, our military guys, men and women. And there was a major trauma center, and we had the only medical facility in the whole country that had the capability of doing intensive care, right? So we had Iraqis in the hospital that had been with us for months that were in intensive care. We were rehabilitating them from their injuries. Some of them were civilians, women, children, men. We knew their families because we had to work ways to get them onto the base so they could do visitation. So if you can imagine kind of the civilian piece of the hospital and making all of that work in the middle of a war.
Right.
When you do major operations, big operations, the Fallujahs and the Ramatis and some of the names that would resonate with people. When you do big military operations, military doctrine and operational orders dictate for medics that you empty the hospital. You make it like a brand new hospital. Every bed is empty. You get rid of every patient. You put them someplace else, so that when the casualties come, you're starting from scratch. right?
Oh,
So
wow.
you've got
Hmm.
maximum capacity. So we were ordered to do that because we were going to do an operation in 2008. We had two choices. One was to move all of those Iraqis to a place in Baghdad that didn't have the capability to take care of them. So that choice was to euthanize them, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
no different. It's no different than putting a dog to sleep at a shelter, okay?
Wow.
Because you don't have the space. The other was to disobey orders and to leave them there and go ahead and do the operation with the people there. So now put yourself in a medical facilities with doctors, nurses, medical technicians, and people that are dedicating their whole lives to not only people but service and all the things that go along with that. And then take military doctrine and orders, let that fly in the
Right.
face of all of our foundational stuff. Well, the decision was made to move them, so we euthanized about 12 people, and the operation got canceled. We never did it. That feeling that
Dave,
just ran, that feeling
oh,
that just, Neena, that feeling that just ran through your body is the beginnings of moral injury. Except when you own it and you're part of it, it's with you for the rest of your life.
yeah.
And
Wow.
this runs congruent with PTSD. Let me give you another example.
Hmm.
You join the United States Fill-In Academy, Military Academy, Naval Academy, Air Force Academy. You join the academy, and you're a young female, and you've done everything that it requires you to get into the academy, which is extensive. You have to be a hell of a human being to just get accepted. And you have to have congressional sponsorship to do that. And your first year in the academy, a senior cadet abuses his authority, gets you alone, and either rapes you or sexually assaults you in some way. Everything that you believed in, everything that you were told, and you went to an
Yep.
institution that you get it,
Yep. Yep.
that's a moral injury. That doesn't have to happen in the military, and it doesn't. And by the way, in the military, you don't have to be in a deployed location during a war to be morally injured.
Right. Right.
40%. Our nation creates 1,300 veterans a day. 1,300
Oh,
people
wow.
become veterans every day.
Wow.
40% of those veterans walk out of active duty with moral injury at some level.
Wow. Wow. That's high. Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, this
So
is
I'm
a
talking.
this,
So I'm talking out loud about it because we need to be aware of it.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and and uh, and so, like I said, there's work being done in the AE. The journals at Air University, www.airuniversity.af.edu, and you can go on there and look up. You can find the
Mm.
journal, and you'll find the journal on moral injury. And my story's in there, and it's much more comprehensive than I told. But the science is there too, and the studies to show
Is
that.
that what you're mainly doing, like you're speaking on, like your keynote and things like that?
De-
It's more
it depends on the audience. I spoke on moral injury at the Hall of Fame because the audience that was there was the right audience to kind of have that resonate with them because the work all overlaps. But my keynotes are in a couple areas. My keynotes in leadership are about the 25-yard gap,
Mhm.
which is not leading from assumptions and doing the hard work and building the relationships and the empathy needed so that you can truly lead people, because you have to know about people before you can lead them. And we've lost the art of deliberately developing young people to lead. And it's because of this phenomenon, this fear and pain of closing the gap, and that's a social gap, a gender gap, an age gap, all of those things. And you have to mix and you have to learn. And 25 yards just happens to be the distance of a military barracks. I was a student leader in basic training. I had 12 guys I was responsible for. And I made some assumptions at 25 yards that once I closed the gap and figured it out, I became not only to become much more of an effective leader, but I started to learn what I didn't know. And it gave me the ability to learn how to find out. And so in life, that's a huge tool. And then organizationally, Max Fab, and that's the name of the company, and it's the flag behind me, that came off of the same trauma center that I talked to you about. My insistence on the organizational attitude was, when you're asked how you're doing, you should be able to say, I'm maximum fabulous, because that's the hierarchy of the attitudinal scale. And attitude is what we control every day. And if you're working towards that every day, you're going to end up in a much better place. And as human beings, we move forward in a much healthier way when we're controlling our attitude and emitting positivity. And so energy comes in a lot of forms, but you can always flip the polarity to positive.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how is it, what does this look like when you're working with organizations, right? Because I'm a big proponent of organizations really cultivating, that camaraderie, if you will, or that support for their leaders, because companies are missing. A lot of companies are missing that. And some people think that if you're at a company for this amount of time, then you naturally are going to go into that leadership role. But that does not mean they're good leaders, right? I've had people that have been over me that should never have been, right? So if, I know that there's a lot of, like I said, CEOs and stuff that listen to the show. So how do you let them recognize that this is worth it for them to do, A, and what does that like to bring your organization on to help them?
Sure. So a couple of things. I'll give you some statistics really quick. The average individual, the average human being starts leading other human beings at about the age of 30. College, basic experience, show some potential, you get a leadership job. By 39, they're transitioning to something that sounds like a directorship where they're leading humans that are leading humans. By 42, they get their first formal leadership training. So for 12 years, they've been out there making it up. So here's what I'll tell the leaders out there, because I'm not going to be right on all of this, because some people actually think about this. So at some point in time over the last 2 generations, leadership, deliberate development, and the human resource got decoupled from the hard product of whatever institution you're in. If it's healthcare, if it's building cars, or whatever it is. It used to be like this. You couldn't build a quality car until you built quality humans building cars. And the two were congruent.
That's right.
Somewhere in there through bottom line, margins, finances, so some of the stressors on companies like healthcare and benefits and wages, somewhere in there, it got decoupled. And the human resource was called a soft skill. And if you really answer this question honestly to yourself with whatever you control and whatever company you're in, if you answer this question honestly, you'll find out why you have retention problems. You'll find out why you are leaking money in the human resources area. And the question is, with all of the strategy that you do you have a deliberate development strategy to take the 23-year-old college graduate and actually give them an opportunity to develop skills that they can demonstrate, keeps them from running people off because they're bad bosses, which you described, and actually puts them in a situation where they can fail forward, they have support, and they are growing constantly to the point where they can take your job. There's no continuums in the workforce anymore.
Yep.
And so that starts with the 25-yard gap, because we stand over here and we say, I know what these people need. And you actually don't, because you haven't asked. And we used to ask all the time because we made time in our whole strategic plan and in our day-to-day work environment. We made time to have this thing. And somebody says, what do you mean if I had a doggy daycare, it would make your life much better and you're leaving because we don't have doggy daycare? That's ridiculous. Well, actually, it's not, because if one person tells you they need doggy daycare, 10 people need it.
Yeah. Right.
And so this is the hard reality. And somebody once told me, the gap between a CEO and the next layer down, even the C-suite people that, the CE, the CEOs, the COOs, and, that gap is very large. And a lot of times when you're at the top, and I've sat in those chairs, and this has actually come out of my mouth, so guilty as charged, you say things like, well, I've already done that. I understand that. I know that process.
Yep.
But if you're that far removed, the answer is that there is so much that you don't know. And what happens in organizations, this is what I try to teach is, you don't have to be a micromanager to stay tactically aware.
Yep.
And if you have other chief executives, directors, and managers that get their feelings hurt, or they have a temper tantrum because you're talking to their people, then they're the problem. And they probably need to move on.
100%. 100%. But again, it's what you're saying as well, right? It's that gap or that lack of knowledge too, because, lots of times we just get promoted because we're hardworking and we see that we can actually do this job really well. But if you don't start taking leadership classes or personal development classes or whatever it is, I'm sorry, but you are going to hurt some feelings, and your feelings are going to get hurt too because you're way too sensitive and you think everybody's after your job and everybody wants what you have and all that stuff. And I remember when I got into my directorship that I had a team of 20 and I did a 360. I made them all, evaluate me. And the other directors couldn't believe I did something like that. Why would you do that? Oh my gosh. But I'm like, why would I do that? I want to improve. I'm a servant leader. I want to improve. And the only way to improve is to know where is my blind spot. Where am I not communicating properly?
Yeah.
But not everybody does that.
Do you know my goal? I still do this today. I don't have 10,000 people like my last job in the Air Force, but I have people.
Right.
I still do this today, and I will start the conversation off like that. If I'm engaging for a strategic calendar or what we're going to do in the week or whatever it is, and I'll start the conversation off like this: what have I done recently to make you miserable, that was stupid, or makes you want to quit?
Mm-hmm.
And usually you'll get a giggle. They're like, what? And I'll say, no, I've done something. Something's driving you crazy. And there's always something. There's
always something.
Well, being that you said that, you remember the other day when you sent me that email? I still don't even know. There's a word in there I don't even understand, and you totally confused me. I'm like, well, I guess I need to knock that off.
Yeah.
How do I need to change? The respect and the followership that you get from people.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get overly corny, but there is a level of vulnerability that you have to have that nobody wants. Knowledge is power only when shared, Neena.
Yeah.
And when I write that in my books, and it's a line that people will read my book and they will engage with me and they'll go, knowledge is power only when shared. Out of all the words in the book, they get this one thing, because it makes them stop and think about that.
Yeah.
Because they wish that they had bosses that didn't let them fail or go,
right.
Aha, gotcha. And you go, wait a minute, why didn't you tell me that? Well, that's you have. I had to learn it. You have to learn it. Yeah, feel my pain. That stuff is.
It's baloney. It doesn't work. And the other thing is, David, like when you do that, like I have to say that my team was with me for almost my whole time there. They would not leave. Right. Once I left that position, they all left. Like 4 or 5 of them were like, bye. And I'm like, no, don't leave. That's a great. No, you're not here. It's not the same. Right. So it was about building up people, because at the end of the day, I wanted them better than me. It made my job super easy. Like if I said, hey, David, I need you to handle A, B, C, D. Do you need me to explain that? Nope. I know how to do A, B, C, D. Are you sure? Do you need me to do it with you? Nope. Got it. Great. You know how that would leave my brain? Now I'm on to the next thing, because that person had my back and I had theirs.
And celebrate.
Yes.
Celebrate. How many times do you see people sit in a room and the big boss goes, this is absolutely amazing. I can't believe it. It came out of this department, and you're in charge of the department, and you see that person sit up straight in their chair.
Yeah.
And they nod and they go like this, and they do 2 things. They don't give the person credit. They don't say their name or anything out loud. They don't give a person credit in that open format. And they don't take it back to the work section and say, you guys are amazing. Look we just got this kudo. Yeah. You know what they do? They put it on some line of their evaluation, which gives them the top tier rating. And then they start talking about their next position. Folks, if you're running a company and you think that is not going on below you, you're crazy.
Right.
That is not a one-off.
Right.
And quite frankly, we are so far removed from this coupled thing. We don't even know how to define or find leaders.
Yeah.
Well, you're really good you are the best front left tire changer in the whole factory. I'm putting you in charge of transmission installation.
Right.
And all of a sudden 3 people quit in the transmission installation shop. And you go,
Yep.
well, what's going on? You're great. You were great at your job before. What's the matter? I don't know. I have no idea. I have people now. I'm not dealing with inanimate objects.
Right.
That requires leadership, not management.
Right.
It's 3-dimensional, and sometimes it's 4-dimensional.
Yeah.
And if you're truly leading, the first thing you worry about in the morning is your people, and the last thing you think about before you go to sleep is your people. If you're truly doing that.
True. Absolutely. And I'm also one of those that got my hands dirty. You got something to do. Let's do it. Let's do it together. I'm not just, I love that though. It built this sense of trust and camaraderie that I love that. I think I'm a great leader. I think, not because I'm like, oh, you're such a great leader, but because I was able to really mess up a lot. And in those mess ups was able to get such amazing feedback.
So in my first book, the second subtitle in very subtle letters, in fact, if you got to really pay attention to it, it says, leaders are appointed and anointed only by their peers and followers.
That's it.
That's earned.
That's right.
And it's exactly what you just described. And so if you don't hear out of your followers and your peers, that's my leader, that's my boss.
I know.
But I don't hear it. I'm not hearing it.
Yeah. So I used to hear it, and I love that feeling of you really respect my position. You respect me because I respect you. And
or they go to the mat for you. Somebody from another section comes over, and they're almost physically like, I'm going to punch you out, which is
so cool.
It's great.
So cool. And some of us CEO people can get off a little bit of our high horse. We would really realize how much better it is to be in a group with others.
So you asked how this can help. I think we've described that. Yeah. Now I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
When a guy like Dave shows up with all of this,
all that beauty.
It's loud and it's but when Dave shows up with all of this with the passion that I have, and I talk very succinctly, it's not squishy, right?
Right.
This is stuff I've lived. And I go into a place and I say, here's the deal. Here's what you need to do. And it is counterintuitive to a couple of things, especially in HR. It's counterintuitive to current policy and procedure. It's counterintuitive to the current strategic plan. And it cannot be conceived at the lower levels, middle management. It cannot be easily conceived as being of value. How many doors do you think it closed? Because it's just scary. It looks like more work and it's hard and it's painful and people don't want to do that. Those are the institutions that are right on the edge of failing because they have put in all these processes. They don't understand why their margins and their turnover rates, and you've got all this leakage all over the company, which post-COVID is really healthcare in the United States of America. They're experiencing this phenomenon. And as a disaster manager, which you talked about, when COVID first started, before we had the first case in Montana, and I was working with the leaders of a hospital region, I told them, I said, I'm not worried about patients getting sick and people taking care of them. And we have trained people to do that. What I'm worried about is the second and third order of effects in this phenomenon and what are going to happen to the people if we don't lead them properly and we are not in the right places doing the right things. Because on the back end of this, what you're going to have is so much leakage that the institution is not going to fail because your ICU is full of COVID patients. It's going to fail when the ICUs are empty and everything calms down and you look around and nobody's left, or everybody's burnt out, or everybody has quiet quit. And I got thrown out of the room. I got asked to go away. Well, guess who's getting asked to come back and speak to institutions on how to go from surviving to thriving now?
Right. Well, truth is not always celebrated, right? Truth is not always celebrated. So when you go in with a clear mind and you're going to tell the truth and you're going to show things for what they really are, not everybody wants to do that. We have something called in Spanish where people try to cover the sun with their thumb. right? Meaning like they don't want to see it, so they're gonna cover it up, even though the sun is ginormous. And that's what you did, right? You went in there and you saw a problem that you knew through experience this was going to happen, especially with someone who's been in the military, who's had to go into combat, who's seen these things. Like, this is what's gonna happen. We're gonna be all camaraderie, everything, and then when everything's over, this is when the S hits the fan, right?
No.
And but you were telling the truth, David. People don't like truth tellers. All
Yeah,
right,
well,
you went in there straight talking, no sugar added. That's
I
what you
know.
did.
And some people have felt all the same pain that I have, and then they started a podcast about
Right.
it. So, but listen, the podcast, you're using me as a vehicle to help CEOs and improve and to be
Yep.
introspective, which is great.
Right.
But I think, well, first of all, you have an audience. You've said you have an audience, and you get feedback. So good on you. Second of all, people are listening to this to find the courage to do what you did.
Right.
To build an environment where every minute of every day that you walked into that environment, you took your ego and your pride,
Right.
and you found a nice, safe place for them to sit while you were humaning, managing, leading, developing, and responsible for other humans' emotional, physical, and mental health.
That's right. That's right.
Because you can make some decisions or not make some decisions
Right.
in a workspace that make people go home and drink, that make people make bad decisions. That is the tipping point in their relationships.
So
All of those things. If you don't feel the weight of that, then please look at your name tag and get anything in there that says managing, directing, or leading. Take it off and go find a job so that you don't contaminate other human beings.
That's right.
And that is heavy.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel the weight of that, you're not in the right space.
That's right.
So when you're looking at your margins and you've got leakage and you go, well, what's the most expensive thing in any institution? The human.
Yeah.
But you don't have, but you're not working on the human as well. Your research and development budget is 25%. That's probably big, but 15% of your company, if you're an innovator, 15% of your company is just in research and development. And you put all this intellectual capital over there and let people lock themselves in the room and build the next best widget based off the last widget, right? And your human resources department is understaffed.
Yep.
The way that you go out and recruit and how you engage and are competitive to get the high level intellectual capital that you need, and the culture and the environment that you're bringing into, you're spending less than half of 1%.
Yeah.
On that.
Yep.
You should expect to have problems.
No, David, stop telling the truth. This is the problem with you.
But people don't want to go there because there somebody has to be at fault. Now,
right.
That's how the institutions work.
Right.
In our world, what we're talking about is in failure, everybody fails forward. And unless you've broken the law, moral, legal, ethical stuff, unless you've broken the law, failure is only opportunity.
That's how I see it. Right.
And so you have to calm that down.
Right.
And not think that you're going to perish. Now, I will tell you, I don't know if you're a football fan. I watched the football game last night. The Bills had a miserable game. And today they fired their offensive coordinator. And I thought about that. And I thought, did they fire the offensive coordinator because they lost a game at home they shouldn't have lost? And I thought, no, because I'm a big football fan. And I watch the Bills only because I'm a Dolphins fan and they're the enemy. And so this is relevant. And I thought, why did they fire the offensive coordinator right now? And I thought he was on the clock to perform or not to perform. And I bet you that team gave him new expectations and guidance based on probably towards the beginning of the season when they were struggling. And that was the tipping point. That was we gave you the chance to do that. I'm hoping that.
Yeah.
Or it was total discovery learning this morning when they walked in and said, oh, we're going to go a different direction and we're going to let you go. And he's sitting there going, gosh, up until yesterday, I was an A+. Now I'm an F.
Right.
How did that happen? Nothing should ever be a surprise to anybody that works for you, ever. If they are a middle of the road average employee that deserves the wage, they earn the wage that they get, and they're not going to get as big a bonus as somebody else, that should not be a surprise on the day the bonuses come out.
Agreed. I agree with that. That is so true. David, you are phenomenal. And I know that we ran over time. I'm sorry about that, but I really
good.
enjoyed speaking with you.
Yeah, you bet.
And so before I let you go, though, you
Mhm.
know, I do want people to know how to contact you, right? So
Sure.
give us that. Like, how do they get your book? How do they contact
So,
you to work with you and hire you? All that great stuff.
right.
Give it to me.
All the books and the blogs and I have my own podcast. I should probably have you on because it's called the Kangaroo Leadership Podcast, and it's because kangaroos physically can only move forward, and I only want
I didn't
I
know
only
that.
want and I
You're
only
teaching me
want
so many things today.
I only want leaders on the show that can strategize and move forward and not retreat,
I love
even if
that.
that means standing still for a while.
Yeah.
MaxFabConsulting.com is the website. Go there.
Okay.
MaxFab Consulting.com. There's some really grotesque pictures of me when I was younger, and some current pictures, and just for fun, and a little bit more about me. But the big thing is just go consume the blogs, and you know. My books are meant to be introspective. They're written in Ken Blanchard style. If you're a Ken Blanchard guy, short chapters, you can read them even if you're tired. You can get through a chapter before you go to sleep, and then some one-liners to help you start thinking. And once we start thinking, we start doing, and once we start doing, we get better. And if you kind of go the direction that the books take you, you're going to be the type of person that you and I just described as successful in leadership.
Amen. Just drop the mic and walk off, David. David, thank you so much for being on Straight Talk. I really appreciate you and your energy. Love it. Thank you.
You bet. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. I knew that you would like it. I told you I find the best humans I can find on this planet. David is definitely one of them. And I want to make sure that you connect with him. I'm going to make sure to link all of his information below, all the show notes, and where you can reach him so you can buy his book and get your leadership in order, y'all. You know, I'm always talking to you about getting your leadership in order. It is so important because we are really serving others. Like when you are in leadership, you are serving your team because your team is serving others. I mean, this is how we keep going. This is how the business keeps going. This is how you keep being employed and getting better every time. I tell you guys about this all the time. I love you so much. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, all that great stuff, because I know there's leaders out there that are really going to benefit by working with David. And I want to make sure that this happens. Okay. So love you guys. This is Neena Perez. This is Straight Talk, no sugar added. Until next time.